Hey friends, this is Joseph Maynor. So what I want to do in this video is I want to give some insights that I've gleaned from teachings with respect to personal development and even other art forms like jazz, trumpet, and chess. And I've learned a couple of lessons here. The first lesson that I've learned is that I'm not a memorizer. I'd rather learn principles than memorize something. And furthermore, I'd rather learn how to develop my own voice than memorize something or even learn principles, if that makes sense. So it's following my own aesthetic, my own intuition that I'm looking to do in any kind of artistry or conscious creation. But lately I've been learning this in a few different domains. The first domain, obviously is personal development, self-help. Where, you're just hearing people pontificate their points of view, however that works. And then you have a relationship with those points of view, right? And so you're like, well, in order for me to consciously create, I have to consider these other voices. Well, no, not at all, right? That have to is a limiting belief. Not at all. You don't have to consider anything. See? But there's this kind of sales proposition or advertising proposition that says, well, you should consider something because it will be good, right? So in other words, like buy this course, buy this book, hire this teacher, get this product or service, and it will improve your life. Well, it will definitely give you more experiences. Whether it will improve your life or not, I think is an open question. And I mean, how could your life be improved is even a deeper question. Who's doing the improving? Who are you listening to? See? Who are you attaching your wagon to? People are followers. One of the things I've noticed, man, and I've always hated this in myself and in others, is just how sheep-like people are. But sometimes, there's some good that comes from being the sheep, though, too, right? Like, being the sheep, you get to participate in what sheep do. But man, there's some sense in which, if you want to be a creator or an artist, you can't be a sheep anymore, right? You have to move to something that trumps that. And that really, is knowing yourself. But then also not knowing too, not being ridiculously controlling over that, because you don't have to be. Right? The people who are ridiculously controlling about that, they have another motive, right? They're trying to make money. They're trying to convince somebody else. They're trying to convince themselves. So there's no need to get neurotic about any of this. But what I want to do is I want to explain some things that I've learned about the downside of relying on somebody else to teach you how to consciously create. So, we can see this in personal development. I have my own ideas. Other teachers have their own ideas. My preference is to not be pushy because I'm not looking to make money, expressing my truth. But I could see that if I was in the business of trying to make money expressing my truth, it would actually be very tempting for me to make my truth your truth, right? Like you should think like me. I'm 100 years ahead of everybody else, right? You should think like me. So here's the thing. Realize that this person is a teacher, and there are pros and cons to all teachings. Now, the con to all teachings is that what you really have is that person's preferences systematized. Now, the more we verge towards science or towards common sense, we can say, well, some people, they really do have their head more screwed on tight with regard to a certain objective metric that we can say or compare this person to. But that's like a tiny fraction of life. That's like 10% of life that functions that way. The other 90% of life is just somebody made something up and they have the balls to pretend like they're super confident about it and gaslight everybody that they have the one right answer about something so that they can sell some kind of influence or authority. And we all do this. We have to do this to survive. But I think like once you start doing this with artistry, like teaching people how to consciously create, whether it's in their own self-help work, whether it's playing trumpet or doing comedy or playing chess even, playing video games, Minecraft. As a teacher, you're misleading people as much as you're helping people. And I'll tell you why. It's this whole thing about memorization. Like memorization is good when you're 5, right? I mean, you got to learn how to do arithmetic. You got to learn how to separate, your ego from the community and realize that sometimes you got to share your toys. I mean, there's a certain amount of like teaching and education that I think we all realize that most people need. But if you really want to be an artist or a conscious creator, you want to follow your own taste and your own intuition. And the thing is, though, is it becomes really confusing about how to relate with teachers. Because on the one hand, you realize that teacher is coming from their own perspective. They're not coming from some kind of a universal perspective, right? As much as they want to advertise that that's what they're doing. That's bullshit. If they don't know that, then they're delusional, right? They're less conscious than you are because you realize that. So, chances are, though, they do realize that, but they realize that people are sheep. They want a leader, right? It's this whole kind of, we're trained to think that there's a shortcut to becoming a conscious creator. And there kind of is. Like if you look at anybody in any kind of an art form, they studied off of something, whether it was they read a book, they reviewed somebody's work, right? I mean, because we don't want to sort of recreate the wheel in whatever it is that we're doing. So for example, just in terms of making YouTube videos, I mean, my videos have obviously gotten a lot better. I mean, I've made a lot of my videos private because they sucked. My insights didn't suck, but like my making videos sucked, and they probably still do suck, but I'm just saying, like, they sucked even worse. So how did I get better at making videos? Well, I watched a lot of other people's videos. I watched a lot of my own videos, and I started to, to improve intuitively, and it took a long time. I mean, I've been making videos since 2019. So, at least like 6 years or whatever. My first videos were god awful. And so there is some sense in which we do improve via comparison as conscious creators. You're not in a bubble. If you're playing music, you're in a genre. If you're teaching spirituality, you're in a genre. There are other people who are doing it too. So, there is this kind of egoic component to sharing our art. We want it to be good, not just for ourselves, but for other people, especially if we're trying to sell our art, which all of us are, really. Any kind of job you have, you're selling a product or a service. You're selling your consciousness, basically, for money, right? In some way, shape, or form. And even if you're not doing this, you're not off the hook, because you still got to worry about your physical health, your mental health. These are very grounding things. Your solar plexus, somebody might be trying to take advantage of you, right? Just because you have a lot of money or you have a lot of something doesn't take you off the hook of this kind of survival game that we're all playing. But that said, I really feel like it's still important for each person to take responsibility for not being a sheep, but being the source. I don't like the word God. I think it makes me cringe, man. It just makes me cringe. So, however you want to say that, being the divine, being the source, there's a part of you that needs to tap into that. I agree with that. I just don't like the word God. Okay, that's just it's cringe, man. I think it's a matter of taste. Some people do like the word God. They really resonate with that. See, for me, my experience of God was when I was religious. And I did have a relationship with God. And then I started talking about that as the divine as I've gone, because I want to make a distinction between the divine and God. So I think it's just the word God that to me is off-putting, because it's being used in all these kinds of different ways. For me, I have a very specific way that I use the word God. But that's just my preference. And if you look at my channel, I talk about some extended spiral stages that I developed. But you got to look at that. I'm not trying to push that as the one right truth or everybody else should follow this. I just created that for my own life. Actually, I created that because it felt right for me to do. And that's the part of my work that I actually love the most, is where I felt like I was growing, and I felt like I was putting together my own theory. But then, let's say that you are watching my videos, and would it be right for me to say oh yeah, you should memorize all my theory? Well, some people do that. I don't think so. I look at it, I've said this many times, but I look at it no, what you should do is you should take what I'm doing, be influenced by it, but then do something of your own sort of analogous to what I'm doing or not. Maybe you're not interested in personal development, self-help, and so on, right? But for God's sakes, man, don't be a follower for too long. Don't be a reactor for too long either. If you're in a bad relationship, leave. You know what I'm saying? Don't fight other people about what's true or not true. Who cares? Don't fight other people about what's true or not true. Who cares? Because what do you want? You want to be good at something, right? You want to be a good conscious creator. You want to be good at personal development. You want to be good at chess. You want to be good at playing music. Well, ultimately, you got to know how to deal with teachers. This is the problem. Okay, friends, so we're halfway through the video. I'll come back and we'll do the second half. Just give me 1 second. All right, friends, welcome back. So here's the conundrum regarding teachers and teachings, and where I'm trying to get you, which is to follow your own taste, your own intuition, consciously create with self-acceptance. The inverse of this is, now I'm wasting my time trying to figure out why you think this is something to teach me. Right? Memorizing your story. You can even do this to yourself. This can get nuts. This is why you have to be able to clear this, right? You have to be able to empty your cup too. You can actually get to the point where you start memorizing your own story. You're wasting your time trying to figure out why you think this is something to teach yourself. Instead of just realizing like this is a part of life. This kind of intellectual masturbation stuff, it's a part of life. And to call it masturbation actually is kind of true and false. Because, tell me one person who doesn't have their head up their ass regarding their own sort of intellect and how they view things. Even people who say, well, there's no self, there's no separate self, blah, 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 blah. They still want to like force their talk down your throat, right? They want you to memorize what they have to say, their story. And this can actually be a lot more subtle than you think. Like, so for example, if you're like, okay, I want to hire somebody to help teach me about chess, right? And you're like, more specifically, I want to learn the Smith-Morra Gambit. And you hire some teacher, and the teacher, he teaches you the Smith-Morra Gambit the way that he wants to teach it to you. But as you're learning it, there's this paradox between memorization and conceptual understanding. And you realize too, as you've taught other people, there's an admixture between like judgment and choice and selection. It's like history and what the person is to memorize. Like you created the history just as much as you culled the history from the facts, because you had to do some kind of a selection to create the book, the history book, right? The history discourse. So anytime you're interfacing with a teacher, you got to realize that teacher is wrong just as much as they are right. And there's a trade-off. You're going to spend just as much memory and resources on memorizing their story as you are about finding nuggets that will actually help you consciously create from your own intuition and your own taste. Because you're sitting there, I just want to get better at life. I just want to get better at growth. I just want to get better at chess. I just want to get better at playing jazz. I just want to get better at playing pool or golf or, whatever it is, making more money in my field of work. I just want to get better at that. But then you have all these relationships with like sources, outside sources that are promising to help you get better at those things. And so you're going to relate with like quote unquote authorities, But you also got to realize, on the one hand, you're the only authority, and you're actually not an authority. You're just somebody who's trying to get better at something. You're like, dude, I just want to get better at playing chess. I just want to get better at playing jazz trumpet. I just want to get better at, making more money, or improving my social life, or whatever it is. I mean, so one of the things you have to do is you have to take teachers with a grain of salt, and realize that they're just as confused as you are. Whatever use they have to you should, to some extent, be aligned with your taste and your intuition, and also your own creative trajectory as a conscious creator about how you want to interface with something. So, for example, you don't want to just memorize a bunch of chess moves to win at chess. You want to enjoy playing chess, don't you? You don't want to just memorize a bunch of licks, a bunch of scales to play music. You just want to be able to create music that sounds good to you. So we talked a little bit about chess. The thing about chess is that you can't put your faith in any kind of chess teacher. You have to grab the bull by the horns and actually do the research into whatever opening that you want to learn, and know why every move is made. See, that's the thing, with me, with music too. Like when I'm playing jazz trumpet, I gotta know why. I gotta know why I want to learn a particular thing. And oftentimes it will fall away. So for example, I can't tell you how many jazz books that I've bought. I play jazz trumpet, those of you guys who don't know. I can't tell you how many countless jazz books I've bought with it, there's this little technique here, there's this technique here, there's this technique here, there's this technique here. And I try the thing and I'm like, this is not me. It's like going into a clothing store and trying on an article of clothing and realizing it just doesn't fit me. It doesn't look good on me. It doesn't fit me. It doesn't fit my style. It doesn't fit my personality, right? And then I got to the point where I realized, as I've been practicing jazz trumpet lately, I've been focusing on the progressions, and just that works for me. That's like me wearing, the black shirt that I always wear, looking the way that I do. I mean, there's an aesthetic that I prefer. And what it is with music is I like to focus on the playing through the changes, but I don't want to memorize any licks. The only thing I want to know is what the chord progression is, and I want to have those scales under my fingers. That way I can just play anything. It's like understanding the deep principles of chess, where, yes, every opening in a way is sort of like a chord progression. It sets up a certain kind of game. It sets up a certain kind of structure. Just like, when you play a jazz song, the chord progression sets up a certain kind of a tune. But beyond that, it's not about memorizing lines. It's not about memorizing licks. It's about being free to just intuitively play, consciously create. That's the highest form of artistry. And, I kind of feel a little bit concerned about some of you guys who are focusing so much on God and truth and all of these kinds of things. I find that the best way to consciously create is to be open. But you got to practice too. You got to practice. But ultimately when you're performing, the best conscious creation is where you have a background, you have a practice that you do constantly. I mean, you got to play chess to get good at chess. You got to practice jazz to get good at jazz. You got to practice personal development to get good at personal development. But ultimately, when you're creating, it's like the world silos around you. Space and time stop. And it's just the creativity flowing through you. It's a trust. And it may not always be great. I mean, this is why you need some criticism. This is why, like, you know, I went back and I looked at some of my earlier videos and I'm like, God damn, those videos are awful. You know what I mean? Because the more you do something, the better you get at something too. So there is something to be said for the value of conversation about teaching. There is something to be said about learning why somebody else does something the way they do it, right? But I don't like this, you know, kind of rote mentality or the sheep mentality where the way that I'm going to get good at something is to clone somebody else. Like, no great artist did that, right? I mean, they had influences, every person who's great at something, but ultimately what made them great is surrendering to a power that's greater than them, that's moving through them as the creator. This is really, I mean, I don't like to use the word God, but if I had to use the word God, this is what it would be. You know what I mean? Like, trust in source, but without belief. And understanding how deep conscious creation is. And this can also stop you from futzing around with trying to figure out memorizing a bunch of shit or memorizing somebody else's path or somebody else's story. That's all well and good when you're young, right? But at a certain point when you get older, you got to find your own voice on the bandstand. I mean, if you look at every great artist, they have their own voice. How did they find their own voice? Because they were confident enough at some point to believe in themselves and to accept themselves and to kind of half listen to authorities. Like, you don't want to like dig a hole and live in a hole, right? I mean, that's, you know, don't do that. You don't want to cut yourself off from listening to other people. It's this delicate balance between like listening to, you know, somebody and then not listening to them too. You'd be surprised how many great musicians and artists there are out there who they don't even listen to other people's music. They don't have time to. They have so much music that's coming through them to put together, you know. But they do. Every great artist, right? They have a fondness for somebody, right? Like, oh, you know, maybe Lynyrd Skynyrd or you know, Cream or Eric Clapton or Black Sabbath or something. You know, everybody has AC/DC, right? Everybody has some kind of a, like, when I was a kid, you know, these are the things that I was interested in. But think of all the time that you're wasting trying to figure out why you think somebody needs to teach you something in order for you to just start creating right now and taking action right now. So teachers are wonderful. The dark side of teachers is this implied thing where it's like you need a teacher to improve in something. And oftentimes when you try what that teacher is teaching you, it doesn't sound good. I mean, all these jazz things I've tried, it just doesn't sound good. The things that I play sound good, and that's why I play them, is because they sound good to me. So you have to follow your own taste. and channel your own intuition and have self-acceptance to be a great conscious creator. Okay, friends, hopefully this was a good video. Keep doing what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? Don't let anybody tell you that what you're doing is bad. You'll find out soon enough, right? Your life will teach you all of these things individually for yourself. It might just, you can waste some time too. Be careful about spending too much time being a follower in life. At some point, you have to graduate into becoming a leader and to trusting yourself as an individual. Okay, friends. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you in a week. Take care.